So we're metaphysical notes now on lesson 7, the argument or treatment. The teacher should sit and hear in silence and then let the divine mind impart the whole thing to you. Then there would be no possibility of misunderstanding. But while we're using words, these words are cloaking the real meaning. It is therefore necessary for the student to discern the meaning between the lines. As you know, I don't like affirmations and denials, and I disapprove of them heartily in this work. But I want to clarify that statement to this extent. Do not think that we do not use the argument in the work. I have tried to make that clear by indicating a difference between the word treatment and the word prayer. Such things as affirmations as such are strictly out in this work. I mean by that reciting the scientific statement of being 100 times or 25 times or Lord's Prayer 10 times or everyday prosperity is making me rich. Those things are strictly no part of this message. But argument is not out. Argument is that part of this work which I call treatment. Now, you may use very little treatment most of the time, and then you may find occasion to use a lot of treatment, and I will illustrate each bit of that. A call comes for help, and ordinarily in the course of the day, it gets very little in the way of treatments. I mean that usually when the call comes over the telephone or in a letter, the state of consciousness the practitioner or teacher lives and maintains is sufficient. Realize that this call has nothing to do with the person. It's just suggestion. That then seems to take care of it. Most healings are brought about through nothing more or less than some statement, I'll be with you, or I'll take care of it, or I'm standing by. It is our consciousness of truth, spoken or unspoken, which reveals the harmony of being. Of course, the word I means God. You should certainly know that when you say, I'm standing by, meaning that God is standing by. Your patient is in the best hands in the world. Now, if you were just saying that as a human being, I, Joel Goldsmith, will stand by you, that's pretty dangerous. I, Joel Goldsmith, can never do anything for you. I can of my own self do nothing. And even if I were Jesus Christ, I would have to say, I can of myself do nothing. It is the Father within me, this divine realized state of consciousness that doeth the work. It is the consciousness that is developed through the hours and hours and hours of study and meditation and prayer and living above sense testimony. Most of the healing work, and I'm speaking now for myself, is accomplished just as simply as that at the very time of the telephone call. Incidentally, let me say right here, never tell anyone that you'll give him a treatment tonight or an hour from now. Every call from help must be met at the instant of the call. Tonight might not get here. Meet your cases and meet them now. You can just as well give a treatment this instant while I'm sitting here talking to you as you can when you're alone at home. You can just as well give a treatment riding in a streetcar. You can give a treatment when you're sitting at your desk, talking to one patient and giving the treatment is to another. Why? Because you have no thought to direct at anybody, and you don't have to hold any right thought, and you don't have to send out any right thoughts. All you have to do is sit there and realize within your being that, am I fooled by this appearance? Do I believe there's a power apart from God? Is there more than one life? And isn't that life God? Isn't this just the way that universal belief is coming at me and making me believe it's a person or a condition, when all the time it is hypnotism, hypnotic suggestion? It is a white poodle that doesn't exist. Neither the disease nor the person exists. All that exists is the divine mind that appears as person. You must meet these calls as they come to you. Now let us say, and I'm again illustrating from my own case, that an hour or two later, or a half hour, or 20 minutes later, or 6 hours later, that patient comes right back to my thoughts again, either without any contact from him or by his phoning again for help or by a telegram. Again, I have to meet it in some way. As long as that person or his problem keeps coming to my attention, I've got to meet it in some way. Now I can meet it in the absolute. If I am in that high state of consciousness, by realizing the one. Or if it doesn't satisfy me that something has been done, I may have to close the door of my office and not see the next patient, sit there alone and go into meditation. I may have to reach the center of my being and call, Father, Father, reveal thyself. Let me feel the reality of being. Nothing about the patient or his claim. My mind is stayed on God. So I continue in that meditation, or in that silence, or in pondering God, until the answer comes, until something within me responds and says, it is done. Not necessarily in words, but I have the feeling that it's done, or a sense of healing, or a sense of such complete freedom from the person and the problem that even if he called 10 minutes later and said, I am worried, I would pay no attention to it. I've already had my answer. It may take him 10 minutes or 10 hours before he realizes his healing, but I'm done with that. The moment this thing has released itself within me and I am free, the healing has taken place. Person doesn't always realize it as quickly as the practitioner. Now, I've had the experience of having to sit up all night, meditating, pondering some statement of truth, lying down, taking a nap for 15 or 20 minutes, getting up again, and now pondering or reading or meditating for 2 hours, and perhaps starting all over again until the answer came. Why is that? Well, remember how many times Jesus went away for 40 days. We don't get a chance to get away for 40 days. That's the reason. We can't always remain on the mountaintop. Some practitioners and some teachers have their work so organized that every week they can go away for 2 or 3 days and just sit up on the mountaintop with God. We haven't yet accomplished that. No, it's just hasn't worked out for me to get away very often on those mountaintop experiences. I have to take my mountaintop sitting in my home or office, and when the world is asleep at night. That's one of the reasons that once in a while these claims come that catch us unprepared spiritually, so that we can't catch the answer as quickly as we should. We will find that when a call comes to you after you've had days and days of good reading or good association with some friendly associates or speakers, and you have been in high consciousness, you scarcely know whether it is a hard case or an easy case. It just melts away. But when you're in the routine of your particular work, and sometimes I and mine, we are not always in that high place. And for that reason, error, which is nothing, makes itself apparent to us as if it were a horrible devil. At those times, we can't seem to get the feeling that it is nothing. That's when we have to stick with it. Now, if I were going to give a treatment and I'm sitting here with some case being presented to me of what seemed a serious nature, I might ponder. It would come to me on life. I would think about life and God, of the fact that there's only one life and that life is God. And perhaps it is life must be eternal, must be infinite, must be omnipresent, and it must be the life of every individual, so that nowhere in heaven or on earth could there be an impaired life. a diseased life, a dead life, a paralyzed life, a sinful life, I would realize surely that only a mesmeric suggestion could testify to error, and this is reversed in the understanding of one mind. Thought would go from one thing to another, and then finally it would die out, and there would be awareness of life and God. That would be treatment or the use of argument. But I would not feel that my work were done there. At that moment would begin what I call prayer. Prayer is to me a state of receptivity. Treatment of the argument just lifts us up, pushes us up to where we can apprehend or catch the word of God as it comes into consciousness. This is the third time that I've seen on the this is the third time that I've been on the platform today. And I really feel about 10 miles above the street. So if a call came, I don't think I would take it very seriously right now. I think I can see quite clearly that it is a piece of nonsense. But if it didn't seem that way, then I would get down and really start on treatment. Now, I would not treat the person, and I wouldn't treat the condition. I would treat me. I would treat myself. I would say, now here, what is this that is touching you? This is just nothing but suggestion coming to you of selfhood apart from God. This is nothing more or less than the hypnotist trying to make you believe there's a white poodle when you know in your heart and soul there isn't. Why don't you wake up? Why should you believe, you of all people, believe that there is such a thing as mortality or fear? Why should you believe there is a mind apart from God? I would soon see that any form of error is but the misinterpretation of good. Yes, I might do that for a while, and then I'd say, okay, now I would then sit there and I'd wait. I'd just wait until this contact came. You know, it is just as though a little click occurred, a breath or an inhalation of breath. I just catch that something like that, and I have a complete sense of release. Then I can get up and go out and nothing bothers me after that. I'm sure that all is well with the patient, and it usually is. That use of the argument is legitimate, and in many cases is necessary. Surely you'll do more of it than I will, most of you, for the simple reason that I have been doing so much of it for 18 years. I'm almost at a place where it isn't necessary to do very much of it very often. But it is legitimate for you to do it every time any presentation of error comes to you. Then it is right for you to sit down and say, well, now, what is this coming at me? Is this a couple of streetcar tracks that are trying to make me believe they come together? Well, I don't have to accept that. Is there somebody telling me there's a little white poodle or a black one or a pink one? I don't have to accept that. This is nothing more or less than the actual presence of God, which mortal or finite sense has misinterpreted and is up to me to reinterpret. There is nothing but the presence of God, God infinite and all. There is nothing else. And so let's just take a moment and let's do two things. Let's treat ourselves first. And no, actually, let's reverse that. Let's treat the world. And I'll walk through that with you. And then we'll do ourselves. And this will be a practice that you can practice on your own. So we'll see the world as, let's picture a globe. Well, let's put that globe in our lap. with our arms around it. And we'll know that all that exists here, from the planet itself and all that it is, it's lava and tunnels and crusts and fissures, all of those minerals in the solid form of the, well, again, we don't know if there's hollow, but the earth itself. We'll acknowledge that is an expression of God appearing. Then let's do the same for all of the plants. All are God appearing. And let's move to animals. All, again, nothing but God appearing. And now mankind all over the globe, God appearing as individuals. And we rest until we feel some sort of release. It can be unique to you. It's your signal, your personal signal that God is on the scene, that you've made that connection. Your cord is plugged into that outlet. And now let's do this for ourselves. You can take a particular challenge that you have or not, and just know you are God appearing this moment and the next and the next, forever. Should you have any kind of pain or problem or upset, discomfort, it's simply nudging you on the path. Sometimes with a wallop. But the bottom line is, I am. I, God, am. You are. So I will continue with metaphysical notes, lesson 7, prayer and receptivity. Now that is legitimate. Only do not stop there. I'm going to start again because he's referring to last sentence, which was separated from this. So I will repeat. There is nothing but the presence of God, God infinite and all. There is nothing else. Now, that is legitimate. Only do not stop there. Do not let anybody on this path stop there, because you haven't yet prayed. All you've done is give yourself a treatment. All you've done is to mentally reassure yourself that the appearances aren't real, but you haven't yet felt the Christ. And what we are interested in is this: Christ healing. What we are interested in is the actual Father within, the Christ that liveth in me, the actual awareness of the presence and power of God, dispelling the illusion of sense. And we're not satisfied with anything less than that. Therefore, if you give yourself a treatment, again, I repeat, never give a treatment to a patient or to a condition. Give yourself a treatment to refute the appearance or the person. Then sit there in your silence with that ear of expectancy and let the answer come. Many times it will not be necessary for many of you to go that far. Many of you, most of the time, will not find it necessary to use the argument. You can take a step higher than that. That step is, when a claim of any kind presents itself to you, whether your own or someone's outside, you can take the attitude of sitting down and finding the center of your being. How you do that, of course, is something else again. I can't give you a process. You may take the word God or Christ or truth and keep it in your thought and always bring your thought back to that, keeping it up until that awareness comes. That is higher even than using the argument, and you can do it if you are keeping yourself in a spiritual condition. Don't think you can do it if you're coming down continuously to this mortal level of living and indulging all this sense business and horrible movies and disgraceful novels and all that kind of stuff that the rabble fills time and mind with. Don't think you can give part of your time to that and at the same time be in a state of spiritual consciousness where you won't need the argument. It can't be done. You've got to live on another plane than that. You can be in the business world. I don't mean you have to leave the business world. You can be in the business world and still live on a spiritual level. But you cannot fill your mind with a lot of these movies and novels and newspaper things and comics and still maintain a spiritual attitude. If you want to maintain a spiritual attitude, you must remember, thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. You must learn to live as much as you can in the atmosphere of the Christ. It's all right to be a good It's all right to be a good citizen and decide whom you'd like to see elected and then go out and vote for him. But don't let it trouble you if he doesn't get elected, or if it looks at the last minute as though he might be defeated. That is not your problem at all. If you're on this path, you are in the world but not of it. On this path, it really doesn't make any difference to you who gets elected or if no one gets elected. You, if you are depending on spiritual security, on spiritual consciousness, on the presence of God, will be safe no matter who is president or dictator. You will be safe whether there are atomic bombs or not. After all, you can't take the responsibility for the rest of the world, even your own relatives. If they don't want to follow this path, must take the penalty of their own states of consciousness. So don't think it will do any good to worry about your parents or your children and whether they're going to be safe in heaven with you. If they're not on this path, your concern is in realizing continuously the true nature of God, appearing as friend, relation, or seeming enemy. Your problem is individually you, and that's not selfishness. The only reason why you are important and why it is necessary to keep this spiritual integrity is because one on this path provides safety, security, and power to thousands. You are keeping your mind off the human problems of the world and stayed on the spiritual things may be affecting tens of thousands of people, and maybe not even in the way you think, but ultimately in the right direction. No matter how far you go on this path, you may still make the wrong human judgment in outlining in any direction. Now, my little illustration is the telephone system. If I want to reach you on the telephone, I cannot do it without first going to Central. I must go to Central to get connected with you. In Duke University and many other institutions of mental practice, the attempt is to get a thought straight across to the other person, either to project the thought to you or to hold it for you. Really and truly, it doesn't work. You can get to the place with mental power where I could hold a thought, and if you were weak-minded enough, I could make you see it. I can hold the image of a flower in my thought, and if you were just weak enough, you'll soon see the image of that flower. Believe me, it's just because you are weak-minded that it happens. You have no right to let anybody at all manipulate your thoughts, or to handle your thoughts, or to send thoughts to you. Never. If you are not in possession of your own mind, what good is it? If you're going to surrender your own mind, well, you'd be better off surrendering your body. Jesus told you that years and years ago, not to fear the man who could kill the body, but the man who could destroy your soul. And nobody can destroy it easier than by getting hold of your mind and using it for manipulation. Now, if you were to ask me for help, I would rather have my arm cut off than to be tempted to send a thought out to you. I would not be guilty of it, but I would sit down here and I would feel this withinness whereby I actually contact the Christ within until I feel the central office. Then I would sit there, enjoy peace, harmony, until I knew it was finished. I'm sure you would have had your healing, but I would just stay at the central office with God. God being the all-knowing mind, God being the omnipotent intelligence, knew where the call came from, and it knew enough to make the contact, to reach through. It did all that. I didn't. All I did was go to the center of my own being, which is God. You see, it is a strange thing. It is literally true that there is only one mind. Therefore, the mind, which is the mind of me, is the mind of you. So when I go to the center of my own mind, there aren't two people to send thoughts out to one another. There's just one infinite person called God communing in us with his infinite children. That infinite intelligence knows just who tuned in and why and what for, and the answer goes forth. Never do I permit myself to think of a human being. When I go to this Christ, I shut the humans out, even those who have asked for help. The mere fact that someone has asked for help or has reached out to me for help is his tuning in to Central, and I suppose we meet there. Excuse me. Let me repeat that last paragraph. Never do I permit myself to think of a human being. When I go to this Christ, I shut the human out, even those who've asked for help. The mere fact that someone has asked for help or has reached out to me for help is his tuning in or his connection with the central office. My going here to God is my going to Central, and I suppose we meet there. That's probably what happens. Then whatever God reveals to me, God reveals to the patient. You see, I haven't had anything to do with it at all except to be the one to go to God, to the center of my being. There, perhaps, we as individuals meet and the whole work is done. But it is done by God, by divine love. Have I made clear the difference between affirmation and denial and using the argument? Have I made it clear that using the argument is legitimate, But the purpose of it isn't something to establish something out there. It's merely to establish the awareness within you of what is without here. Never forget that out here, all there is God appearing as individual you and me. Our argument is not aimed to change or heal or improve someone out here. It is aimed to bring to our souls the assurance and awareness of the already existing perfection out here. When these people take affirmations as a rule, like quote in every day and every way, I'm getting better, that is with the purpose of making a sick person well, a sick person better. When we tell a person to take this statement and repeat it 100 times, we're doing it because we are convinced there is a sin or sickness, and that much repetition is in some way going to heal it. But that's not our work. Again, this is not to say that fine healings haven't been brought about through it, but I do not have too much confidence in the permanence of those healings because they're not always spiritual healings. I've known some of our old workers who really worked hard mentally. A healing took place all right, but because it was a mental healing, the patient might have died of the same illness a year later, or 5 or 10 years later. So it wasn't a healing, it was one mind overpowering another temporarily. Too much of that has been going on. We are not going to indulge in this. If you are on this path, there is a reason why you are on this path, and I will tell it to you. Before we are through with this work, I don't mean this week, because it really doesn't occur that quickly. You're going to find, every single one of you, that it does not matter where you go, you will be noticed. People will see there is something about you that is different. It will be felt. It won't be you. It will be that Christ, that is what does the work. It isn't human personality. It isn't the gift of oratory. It isn't any of these things. It is something indefinable that you become aware of, that just sort of permeates you and emanates from you and is felt. That thing heals your own body and your own business. It is an attraction that attracts to you what we call supply in all different forms. That is why we're on this path. Remember, the work I have in mind isn't so much learning the letter of truth. Ultimately, you will see just 2 points. I and the Father are one. All that the Father hath is mine. And that all there is to err is that illusory sense that makes the tracks seem to come together, or makes a white poodle where there isn't one. Then be finished with the letter of truth. From there on, just learn to live in spiritual consciousness and to live as spiritual consciousness. You see, there is an inner world. There is a world in which we commune on a different level than the outer or human level. Strangely enough, every one of you in this room has had such communion with me, or I've had such communion with you, or else you would not be here. You see, not one of you came here through knowing me. Not one of you came here because I'm a good orator or a good speaker. Not one of you came here because I have any kind of reputation that you know anything about. You are practically all strangers to me. It is somewhere on an inner or spiritual level that the attraction came about, that brought us here. It really was. I haven't been well enough known around here to have a reputation. Do you see what I mean? There must be some kind of thing that we instinctively feel in each other that has drawn us here together. That is our inner communion. It is what Jesus referred to when he said, "My sheep hear my voice." It is what the Hindu means when he looks at a person and says, "You are my student." And the student looks up and says, "I've been looking for you for years." That is exactly it. Did you ever stop to think why so much of spiritual language is written in love language? The Song of Solomon and the things of that kind. It's really because this whole relationship is a relationship of love. You might say that with teacher and student, it's almost love at first sight. If you don't feel it right away, you probably won't feel it later. It doesn't come through the reasoning mind. You can't select a teacher or a teaching with your reasoning mind and then find later that you really have found your teacher or your teaching. You can have teaching with a dozen teachers for reasons of reasons, and then at the end say, I really don't think that I have found my teacher. When you've found the teacher or teaching that's really yours, it is, as I say, love at first sight. You recognize it and say, that's it. That is inner communion. That is communion on an inner level. It is a recognition. It is almost like looking at a person in the eye and saying, I think we're going to be friends forever. There is an inner thing. In many cases, and I think you have all experienced it in some degree, it is just one of those things that sometimes happens. But once you turn to this path, once this teaching becomes a part of your consciousness, you will find that it will be the entire expression of your life. In other words, every day of the week, you will find these people and circumstances and places attracted to you that you couldn't get along without, nor they without you. You will find yourself drawn to those places where you can be of the greatest service at just the right moment. You are tuned in on this infinite spiritual telephone service, and it is the central that is sending out and making the contacts for you. You don't make them. The central sends out and makes them for you. There is no thought of wanting anything or desiring it. This central office just hooks in and says, come on. That is what I mean. When you're living this life, you always find that the central office, God, the inner consciousness of you, is really the dominating influence of your life. You don't think, you just follow the language that they're given to you. You follow the work. You contact just those individuals who mean everything to you. That is really the first step in spiritual living. You might say we've taken the first step right here in being brought together on this invisible beam, this invisible inner communion. That's just the first step. From there on, as we work together, as we remain in this consciousness, you will find others being drawn to you, and you're being drawn to others. You will find yourself being brought to places and places being drawn to you. You will say, my, that's wonderful. That's just the thing I would have loved to have if I could have thought about it. But it is always something greater than you could have thought up for yourself. That is where we are going with this unfoldment. Really and truly, our object is not just to get a little knowledge with which we can stop a few pains or change the dates on a few tombstones. That's nice work, but it really isn't nice enough for the whole lifetime of living. What we want is how to live the life that Jesus came to show us. He didn't come either just to heal sick or raise the dead. That was just to be the proof that the rest of his message was true. The rest of his message was that the spiritual kingdom, we are joint heirs with Christ in God. We are of the household of God, fellow citizens with the saints. And with that, thank you, Joel. Thank you for today's lesson, the reminder. Healing is simply us sitting and acknowledging our godhood. I am that I am.